MTG Red Zone kicks into gear.
Hello and welcome to this round 11 here at Grand Prix Bologna. I'm Tim Willoughby here with Hall of Famer Frank Karsten, ready to bring you all the action in this matchup between the team of Andrzej Strasky, Thomas Hendricks and Ivan Floch against the hometown heroes Enrico Baldrati, Federico Ranchi and Marco Malatesta. Baldrati on the right of our screen there. He is on black-green, typically characterized by playing saplings, and he gets some saplings into play already. Knight of New Bonalia in play for Andrzej Strasky, who we've already seen a little bit in the feature match area, favoring a red-white list here on day 2.
Yeah, and when your 2-drop is Knight of New Bonalia, sapling migration is not the 2-drop you want to face. It makes sure that the attacks of that card are now pretty much stopped. And Baldrati is in the driver's seat. No 3-drop for Strasky either.
Big problems here potentially for Strasky. Deathbloom Thalid, the 3-2 that even when it dies will produce another sapling. That one might want to hold back just until the Knight of New Bonalia is dealt with, but with Spore Crown Thalid in the mix as well, every fungus, every sapling has got +1/+1, so this is a massive set of attacks here for Enrico Baldrati. Andrzej Strasky gets the best trade that he can, but that still leaves 8 power on the battlefield for Enrico Baldrati before he even plays this. Yet another way of getting more saplings into play.
This almost feels like a constructed worthy sapling theme deck. I mean, even the token from Deathbloom Thalid turns into a 2-2. Sapling Migration, when it puts 2 2/2 creatures on the battlefield for 2 mana, that is just an incredible deal. It's so far a very strong start. Now, what is Strasky doing? Finally found the 4th land, just passing the turn. This feels, suspicious.
I mean, one of the key tricks that I think about when I see a white deck leaving leaving less than 5 mana up, shall we say, is Gideon's Reproach somewhere, but all these
and that's also the reason why Enrico didn't actually attack with his Thalid Lord. He didn't want to expose it to specifically Gideon's Reproach.
It looks like Andrzej Strasky, though, whatever he had was clearly not good enough. That about as quick a game as you'll ever find in this Dominaria format. Enrico Baldrati picking up the first game win for his team, and Andrzej Strasky going to his sideboard. One of the cool things about this team limited format, every single card in the pool has to get registered to someone as a sideboard. You can end up with a few more options for adjusting your deck between games than maybe you would see in either sealed or draft.
Yeah, sideboarding. Sideboarding in limited is undervalued in general. I think in constructed people maybe board more than they should, and in limited people, in my experience, board less than they should. But I think Rafael Levy already mentioned an article written by Martin Juza earlier this week on Channel Fireball. It gives some good insight in when and how you want to sideboard in limited, and it's amplified in Team Sealed because sideboards are generally larger because you had so many boosters to work with.
All right, we're going to get a chance to see what is now the Wizard Mirror, the red-blue mirror in the middle table. Thomas Hendricks on the left of our screen, currently got the run of it a little bit in terms of the creatures he has in play, able to get a little bit on the board, and the life totals kind of reflecting that. Also, Federico Ranchi already down to 11 life here, and he's going to be facing a reasonably large amount of attacks here. We have the Cloud Reader Sphinx, the obligatory Sphinx that fits into just about every blue deck in the format. One of the blue's top commons flying on in with a little bit of support as well here.
Yeah, I mean, the Fire Fist Adept is at its best in blue-red because there are plenty of wizards in blue.
Fiery intervention there. Not quite sure what Torgar's doing. Having a look at this game, it's unlikely we're going to see him cast anytime soon. But Fire Fist Adept, 3/3 with a bit of a Flame Tongue Karvu-esque ability in this set. Dealing X damage to target creature an opponent controls, where X is the number of wizards you control as it comes into play.
Yeah, nice play there by Thomas, using Blink of an Eye to unfreeze his Tempest Djinn.
And Tempest Djinn, the 3-mana 0/4 that gets +1 power for each island you control. It will come into play as a 4/4 at present.
And that's pretty good for 3 mana. I mean, you do need a blue heavy mana base to support it, preferably like 10 or 11 islands. Even then, you cannot really expect to cast it on turn 3. More like turn 5 or 6 most of the time, but that's still pretty good for, well, a 3-4 or 4-4 flying.
So Clarity's Sphinx comes down. Federico Ranchi kind of knows that there's the potential that it's just going to end up getting in a tussle with that Investian, but at least for this turn exactly, it will hold off that 5-fist Adept if nothing else. And there comes the Djinn, and there's a follow-up as well. There is the Cyclops coming down for Thomas Hendricks. I kind of like this one. It's grown on me quite a bit over the course of the weekend, Rampaging Cyclops.
Yeah, exactly. It always blocks as a 4-4. Which is fine, and I mean, in late games, sure, you're in some ridiculous board stall and it will attack as effectively a 2-4, but in the early game when you're maybe in a damage race or using some bounce or removal spells to clear the way, it will often attack as a 4-4, so that's above the curve, and I like the card in general.
Fight with Fire there, having to be deployed by Federico Ranchi just to simply kill off the Tempest Djinn. Kind of a rough one there because he's already at 7 mana. If he could have managed to make it all the way up to 9, that would have been 10 damage divided as he chose among any number of targets. A very, very powerful card, and one of those cards that if it gets opened in Team Sealed, you know that someone on the team will be playing it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, in this case, yeah, you could have tried to wait for 2 more lands, but it's way too risky. Especially if Hendricks has any trick to like break up a double block on the Tempest Djinn, you're in so much trouble. You're even taking much damage from his other creatures. So yeah, I do like playing the Fight with Fire just to stave off the bleeding a little bit. Maybe Federico has Gitu Chronicler in his deck to return the Fight with Fire for perhaps a kicker later on, but we'll see.
Adelaide's the Cinder Wind, the other creature that Federico Ranchi now has in play, the red-blue flying hasty wizard that will trigger to pump all of the wizards that it has in play as and when spells get cast.
It's kind of a weird attack by Thomas, representing some kind of trick for sure, because the easy block for Federico is to go for a double block, so that the Cyclops shrinks to a 2-4. But then if Thomas has some instant speed way of taking out the Cloud Reader Sphinx, like Blink of an Eye or Shivan Fire, it turns into actually kind of a jump block. Oh yeah, I guess you can. That also works because the -2 power ability on the Cyclops is not like a trigger. It's not like when it gets blocked by 2 creatures, it shrinks. It's as long as it gets blocked by 2 creatures, it gets smaller. So once you take out one of the 2 blockers, it suddenly resets back to a 4-4. So yeah, bouncing the smaller creature and then taking down the Cloud Reader Sphinx was the correct play.
Academy Drake with Kiko, the follow-up for Federico Ranchi. Very much backpedaling here, trying to find a way of staying in this. Wizard's Lightning, though.
An actual lightning bolt. This is like the bolt snap bolt that we know from Modern, except with Wizard's Lightning and Gitu Chronicler. Nice.
It still works. That enough for Thomas Hendricks to pick up his Game 1. Thomas Hendricks, the only player from the team of Stratsky, Hendricks and Flock to pick up a Game 1 win, as Marco Malatesta has won his Game 1 against Ivan Floch. There you see the Wizard's Lightning that worked so well for Thomas Hendricks in getting that game win there. Even if you're paying 3 mana for your damage to any target, that's fine. Like, you're willing to do that, but once you're getting a straight-up Lightning Bolt, that's about the best rate that you're going to find for burn spells in just about any format.
Yeah, well, in Dominaria Limited, you don't need to play even a single wizard in your deck to put this in. 3 mana for 3 damage is already fine. But when it costs 1, it's extra sweet, perhaps even constructed potential.
Potentially tough day at the office here for Andrei Stratsky, already down to 5 life against Enrico Baldrati's 19. Though a big charge here means that he may be able to put something together in terms of nice blocks on this exact turn. Yeah. Those 2 Pegasus Corsa, on the face of things, not in a very exciting position blocking here, but charge has really changed the face of that block quite substantially.
Yeah, absolutely. Could turn into a 2-for-1 where the charge trades for Deathbloom Talent and Knight of Malice. Not so fast.
And what's awakening here, that going to be a way of getting rid of one of these Pegasus Corsas. Knight of Malice being the creature, of course, that Enrico Baldrati wants to keep around because it's the more potent creature on the battlefield, and our other fungus there quite happily turning into a sapling upon death.
Yep. I guess the Pegasus staying around on board is not the worst for the player controlling Knight of Malice.
Down with the Capuchin Paragon coming down for Andrei Strasky as a follow-up here. Immediately getting eviscerated by Enrico Baldrati. His deck just seems very, very solid from start to finish. Plenty of good removal, lots of good creatures, and that enough for the handtrake from Strasky. He's going to have to watch on and hope that his teammates can bail him out of trouble, because that was absolute carnage in his match.
Yep, that was quick. So actually, if Marco Malatesta wins his current game against Ivan Vlog, Baldrati, Ranchi, Malatesta will have won the entire round, no matter what Thomas Hendricks manages to do.
These teams all currently at 8-2. An 8-2 record, if you can maintain just the 2 losses, will almost certainly be good enough to be drafting towards the end of the day today. And we're going to get a chance to see how the matchup between Marco Malatesta and Ivan Vlog goes, because we have red-white here as well. Pegasus Corsair for Marco Malatesta with a whole variety of equipment that you can potentially pick up. A jousting lance in addition to a short sword there. On the other side of things, though, Ivan Vlog, he's principally black-green, and he's got some lovely creatures in the early stage of the game. A kicked Untamed Kavu there alongside that Knight of Malice. Each of these creatures a pretty clear and present threat to Marco Malatesta's life total, and Marco still on just 3 lands compared to a full 5 for Ivan Vlog, admittedly aided by a little bit of mana ramp there.
Yeah, this is looking good for Vlog. Untamed Kavu in particular, I mean, it's a Titan among 2 drops, but most of the time you want to be kicking it, because a 5/5 Vigilance and also, I guess, Trample creature for 5 mana, it's not much worse than Serra Angel even, when you get +1/+1 in exchange for not having flying. But it does somewhat, it has like a similar effect on the game as like a huge creature that can play both offense and defense. Ooh, Muldrotha the Gravetide. Well, that's well worth splashing for.
6/6 body at the moment might be good enough, but also lets permanents get played from the graveyard each turn for Ivan Vlog. Right now, not too many of them in there. He will be happy to lean on the fact that it's just a gigantic monster to really make life difficult for Marco. 7 life remaining, and plenty more than 7 power on the battlefield for Ivan Vlog here.
Yeah. And even if, say, the Untamed Kavu dies, it'll just come back. Well, the way that Malatesta can come back in this game would be, I guess, to start with a removal spell for Muldrotha, then probably try to block Knight of Malice with the Pegasus Courser, which is currently a 4/4, so that would work. Maybe take 5 from the Untamed Kavu down to 2, and then hope to do something on the next turn. But yeah, if he doesn't even have, I guess, the removal spell for Muldrotha, his first step in getting back, it's gonna be over.
All right, so that one's going to be going to a game 3, and we're going to get a chance to see a little bit more of Thomas Hendricks against Federico Ranchi soon enough. This has been an uncharacteristically quick round of Magic thus far.
Yeah.
Andrei Strasky already defeated, 2 games deep in Ivan Vlog versus Marco Malatesta, and still over 35 minutes left on the round. We're going to get a chance to jump back in on the matchup between Thomas Hendricks and Federico Ranchi. Hendricks a little bit light on mana here. We can see that he's already used a Shivan Fire, but plenty more threats on the battlefield for Ranchi. He's already got Cloud Reader Sphinx getting stuck in here.
Yeah, this doesn't look very good for Hendricks at the moment. That's weird. Maybe he just drew his 3rd land on that turn. Generally speaking, if you have 3 lands and are gonna miss your land drop, and you have Opt, you just want to play the Opt in your main phase in the hope of finding another land. Which is also what we're seeing here. I mean, you can cast all of these instants at the end of your opponent's turn, but sometimes you want to play them on your own turn when it can actually improve the way you play out your own main phase.
So Thomas Hendricks hitting his 4th land drop finally, and he does have a Wizard's Lightning in hand, so he can potentially do a little bit of damage here, though unfortunately the only target that he's going to be able to kill off is not the biggest threat on the battlefield right now.
Yeah, I guess it's possible he wanted to pass the turn with 3 lands and then hoping to Wizard's Lightning whatever Ranchi plays. But yeah, that 4th toughness on the Cloud Reader Sphinx. Man, that card just does it all. It's got to be one of the best creatures, best common creatures that is in Dominaria. 3/4 flying is already a good deal for 5 mana. And just stacking on the free scry, especially in the late game when you're just digging for action. It's comparable to just drawing a card. Really good creature.
Tempest Djinn in hand for Thomas Hendricks. Unfortunately, not the 3 blue mana available to cast it here. Has to look on as he takes yet another hit. Goes for blink of an eye in order to bounce Cloud Reader Sphinx. That not a particularly exciting prospect because
Unwind. It's like the 3 mana negate that gets to untap.
So, yeah.
I wouldn't expect that card to be in the main deck.
In this matchup, though, I do like it, though.
Yeah, he
both
boarded
these
it
decks
in.
are all about spells, and being able to stop what your opponent's doing, stopping a key spell, in this instance has been worth a whole bunch of damage for Federico Ranchi.
I think Ranchi is also holding Syncopate, which, well, yeah. Blink of an Eye, not the most threatening card, but if you don't counter it here, then, well, you're going to have to recast the Cloud Reader Sphinx. Don't have Syncopate mana up anymore, so I guess you might as well just counter this one.
So Thomas Hendricks here, very much on the back foot. Fortunately for him, he won his game 1, so even if Federico Ranchi takes this one, it will not mean the end of the series for his team. He finally has lands and spells. Let's see what he can do with them.
Tempest Djinn would be a start in terms of setting up a defense, since it would be able to block the Cloud Reader Sphinx. On the other hand, I mean, Hendricks hasn't really played, I think, a single creature this entire game. His opponent has seen, well, a large part of his entire deck. If you play a creature, it is quite likely that Ranchi just plays a removal spell, one that he has been holding since pretty much the beginning of the game, and you haven't really accomplished anything. Yeah, so this actually makes sense. If you expect Ranchi to be holding a bunch of removal spells, then just instead of playing a blocker for the Cloud Reader Sphinx, trying to recur a removal spell for it is perhaps a wiser play.
As things stand, though, your prophecy of removal was accurate there, Frank.
But it didn't matter. No.
Thomas Hendricks losing that one again in relatively quick fashion. So we have 2 games going to the decider. Right now, though, the big sort of difference between these 2 teams, Enrico Baldrati able to defeat Andrei Stratsky in a straightforward 2-0 sweep. That meaning that the Italian team just needs to find 1 game win out of the 2 remaining, whereas Ivan Floch, Thomas Hendricks, their backs against the wall. They have to win both of the remaining games in this match if they're going to be able to take the series.
Yep. And, well, given the amount of draws that have been going around, it's possible that a team with 3 losses might still be able to make it to the top 4. So the team that loses here is not completely out of contention, but there's still, of course, a lot at stake for a win. So just to recap where we're at, earlier this morning, every team was presented with 12 boosters of Dominaria. They had to build 3 different decks out of that combined pool. That's what the team sealed is. And after round 14, there will be a cut to top 4, where we will have a team draft in both the semis and the finals.
Okay, kicking things off, Marco Malatesta has a Jousting Lance on 2 and then a Davenant Trapper on 3. The
pretty good
Trapper
start.
Immediately getting killed off by Ivan Floch there. Vicious Offering finding a good target in the Trapper.
And Adventurous Impulse. It's like an Oath of Nissa. Look at the top 3 to take a creature or a land. Just smooths out your draws a little bit.
I like the naming convention that it references back to Impulse, the original Impulse effect. We look at the top 4 and put a card into your hand.
Oh, but Floch was actually looking for a land, but didn't find any.
Well, that's not a good way to win a game of Magic. A Juggernaut coming down for Marco Malatesta, and Ivan Floch is going to have to hope that he finds a land pretty quickly here.
It's a tapped land. And he's about to be run over by a Juggernaut holding a lance somehow. But yeah, 7 power first strike. If Malatesta actually equips, that's quite menacing.
If anything, the fact that he's not equipped here, all the more scary, because that means that there's probably going to be another threat coming down from Malco Malatesta this turn.
Yep.
Plays his 5th land, casts himself an Aven
Sentry. Yeah.
So that one can get shot down from the sky.
Actually, Flock was happy to see the Haven Sentry rather than an equip, as it turns out.
And Corrosive Ooze, the pickup here for Ivan Flock, that can potentially deal with the Lance.
Yeah, because it just destroys the equipment at the end of combat if it blocks or gets blocked by a creature holding an equipment. It doesn't have to deal damage to the equipped creature, right?
That is correct. That is exactly as worded. The Corrosive Ooze, very, very good against equipment, but it will still very much be turned into a messy stain on the ground by this Juggernaut, regardless of whether or not it's holding equipment.
Yeah.
And I guess, given that it's not equipped right now, no real incentive to equip it in the face of seeing that Corrosive Ooze is there.
True. So Ivan Flock is holding both Corrosive Ooze and Deathbloom Thalid. Now, the perfect world for Ivan would be if the Lance would already be equipped to the Juggernaut. Then you can first play Ooze, block, get rid of the Lance, then play Deathbloom Thalid, or I guess Yavimaya Sapper to line up 3 power as a block for the Juggernaut. But given that the Lance is not equipped yet, you first now have to force Malatesta to equip it before you can even get started on this line.
I mean, I guess that with the Yavimaya Sapherd, you can, as we saw from Ivan Flock there, simply throw the Saproling token itself under the bus. You've not lost too much. Lots of power in that hand for Ivan Flock if he can but find lands, but for now that doesn't seem to be in the picture for him. He just needs to tread water, buy himself a little bit of time, and see whether or not he can deal with this problematic Juggernaut.
Yep. It is missing trample or flying or some kind of evasion. Because, 7 power, first strike, difficult to deal with in combat, but Ivan does seem to have enough jump blockers for the time being.
Yavimaya Sapherd getting stuck in here, does not fancy blocking the Juggernaut.
Nope.
Because there is a new creature to do that. They're the original artwork of Juggernaut. Every bit as menacing and scary. Can't be blocked by walls. Was a little bit more relevant back in the days of Alpha. A few more walls available in that set than there are in Dominaria now. But you know what? Attacking each turn if able, 5/3 for 4. It's just a very efficient rate.
Yeah, 5 power for 4 mana is good, especially in this set when you have several cards that care about historic. Well, it is an artifact for that. Also pretty sweet to send into the air with Pegasus Courser. So just a solid card all around.
Corrosive Ooze doing a small amount of work there. It did successfully deal with the Jousting Lance. Juggernaut still hanging around though.
Yeah, nothing for Malatesta to follow up with. Hasn't really added another creature to the battlefield after the Juggernaut entered. Maybe Malatesta is just holding a bunch of removal spells, but no, if that were the case, he probably would have just shut down the Corrosive Ooze to make sure his Jousting Lance would still be around. Maybe some pump spells? Or perhaps Malatesta is just holding lands and no action at all.
Deathbloom Thalid coming down for Ivan Flock here. Crucially, a 3-powered creature which will be able to tussle with Juggernaut and will leave a Saproling token behind once it dies.
I think Malatesta is holding Gideon's Reproach, which does make sense. It is the type of removal spell that he hasn't really had a chance to play yet, and it also wouldn't have helped against the Corrosive Ooze ability. The trigger would happen either way. Well, now he gets a way to use the Gideon's Reproach.
Marco Malatesta probably wouldn't mind an additional card in hand rather than all of this land that he's working with, but no kind of fair trades going on here. One player with not very many lands, one with quite a few. What have we got from Ivan Flock here? He has, well, that's one way of getting lands into play.
It's kind of a land.
Skittering Surveyor allows Ivan Flock to find a second forest. While there are various splashes in Flock's deck, I can see that he wants to basically make sure that his core colours are all covered off, and there are a reasonable amount of double green costs in this Dominaria format.
Yep. So Malatesta, I mean, he still might have a couple turns to draw into creatures and relevant cards, add to the board, but At this point, Malatesta knows that every single card in Ivan's hand is going to be a non-land card, giving Vlog easily the edge if this game takes many more turns. Mesa Pegasus, or Mesa Unicorn rather, not really the card that Malatesta wanted to see on top of his deck. That 2/2 body is almost certainly going to get outclassed by whatever Vlog plays on this turn.
Now Vlog, you have to think that he's been looking at that hand and just waiting for this moment where he's suddenly got lots of mana. Let's see what he's going to do with it. 5 mana.
More mana.
Why not? I mean, I guess that you're not under a huge amount of pressure from Marco Malatesta at this point.
Ooh.
So let's get both of the splash colors, and now we can really get to action. Almost everything in Ivan Vlog's deck now must be castable.
Yeah, so the island is indeed for Muldrotha the Gravetide. The mountain is for, well, actually there's not even a single red card in Vlog's deck. But
Kazarov Sengir
there it
Pureblood.
is. Kazarov Sengir Pureblood has a red activated ability, which is the reason for the mountain in his deck.
Kazarov, by the way, doesn't need to be using that activated ability to be a bit of a bomb on a lot of boards, but given the amount of mana fixing available to Ivan Vlog, it really doesn't cost him too much to have one mountain in his deck just so that he can potentially start shooting down some of the creatures that are in play.
Yeah, and his deck also has 2 copies of Growth from the Ashes, so he has plenty of ways to actually find that mountain in any long game. Alright, 7 mana. Something big, finally.
Marco Malatesta just organising all of his lands, feeling a little awkward here. And it's not either of the splash cards, simply going for the big old dino itself.
Territorial Allosaurus. With the kicker, it's gonna fight any creature once it enters. Sometimes you want to be careful with this card because, let's say, suppose that Vlog had another 5/5 instead of that Skittering Surveyor, and Malatesta had killed his own Mesa Pegasus in response, then you would have actually been forced to fight your own creature. It wasn't the case here.
And Marco Malatesta did use that Shivan Fire once while there was still damage on the Territorial Allosaurus from the fight to be able to kill it off with his burn spell.
Yeah, but still, Vlog is easily in the driver's seat here, still holding a bunch of action. He even has a non-basic land, Memorial to Folly, I believe, the black Memorial that can allow him to take a creature from his graveyard back into his hand. For example, the Territorial Allosaurus if Malatesta plays, I don't know, for example, a Sarah Angel.
In the meantime, though, plenty more just sat in hand. Throwing down a Baloth here, specifically Baloth Gorger. No kicker on this one here. Potentially signalling that there's something else nice that Ivan Vlog wants to do with his mana, and he does in fact get back the dinosaur there.
Yep. Yeah, plays around Malatesta, top decking and playing some kind of big flyer like a Sarah Angel. Now, I think at this point, if I'm Malatesta, like I haven't seen his hand yet, but it seems likely that he's looking over to his right, telling his teammate Federico, well, I'm probably not going to win this one. It's going to come down to you, mate. You have to win this for the team.
Yeah, I mean, when you, as Marco Malatesta, see your opponent with plenty of lands, lots of cards in hand.
Oh, wow. And Muldrotha with the Black Memorial, that's an engine.
I like that a lot. I'm going to have to keep that in mind for all sorts of different formats.
Pretty sweet, actually. Because even if they kill Muldrotha, sure, you can just get it back from the graveyard, cast it again, then put back the Black Memorial. Yeah, that's just impossible to beat unless you have some kind of exile spell.
Well, that's enough for the handshake. Ivan Vlog has done his work. He has defeated Marco Malatesta 2-1. Enrico Baldrati has defeated Andrei Strasky 2-0. The margin of victory in those games doesn't matter. All that matters is this final game between Thomas Hendricks and Federico Ranchi. It appears like we have real draws on both sides here. There's already been a reasonable amount of interaction. Both these players have lands and spells to work with, 5 of each. We just see Federico hitting his 5th land drop this very turn.
Yeah, this game looks like it could go either way. Both of the teams are showcasing what this blue-red archetype is capable of, caring about wizards, like the Fire Fist Adept on Hendricks' side, as well as instants and sorceries, which is what the Fudalian Arcanist on Ranchi's side is able to tap for.
Right now, Hendricks is a little bit down on life compared to Ranchi, just 10 life to work with compared to that full 18 on the other side of things. And an interesting one here coming from Ranchi. He doesn't want to develop his board so much as simply draw more cards with this weight of memory. And even elects to put 3 cards in his own graveyard here. I guess that's a concession to the fact that he's already seen that there's the potential for Thomas Hendricks to get cards back from his graveyard if he so chooses with Gitu Chronicler.
Exactly. There is not a big mill team in this format, so if you don't have a whole ton of these mill cards, you rarely want to target opponents because there are indeed various ways of getting cards back from the graveyard.
Well, here comes Cloud Reader Sphinx from Thomas Hendricks.
Hendricks looking way better on the current board state for the time being, but Ranchi is just having a nice look at his hand filled with 7 non-land cards. This could be turning into a very interesting game.
A deep freeze here, meaning that Sphinx falls to the ground with a thud as a block of ice for now.
Yep. Yeah, you have to play defense first for a little bit.
I mean, if there's enough wizards in play, then we may find that defense turns into offense relatively quickly here, because if you're looking for a signpost uncommon that lets you know what the red-blue is doing, Adeliz the Cinder Wind definitely qualifies, and qualifies for a Wizard's Lightning from Thomas Hendricks there.
Yep. I do think there is a fight with fire in Hendricks' hand. It costs 9 mana to kick, currently only 6 lands, so still pretty far off.
But right now, no targets that are too threatening, and the life total high enough that Thomas Hendricks can afford to wait around a little bit. He's got Blink of an Eye in order to get back his Cloud Reader Sphinx. That will mean that, firstly, he's drawing a card simply from casting the Blink of an Eye itself, and he's then going to get Scry 2 when he recasts Cloud Reader Sphinx. This is a good way of setting up for potentially getting that fight with fire later on. And when you do kick it, all of a sudden it's no longer just creatures that you can target. You can split the damage how you choose between creatures, planeswalkers, and of course players.
Yep. And I see a lot of value in Hendricks' hand. What Hendricks' plan at this point would be to first play the fight with fire on the first threatening creature that Ranchi plays, then get it back with Gitu Chronicler, maybe even play the fight with fire another time, then bounce his own Gitu Chronicler with the academic Journey Mage in his hand, get back fight with fire for the second time, and then eventually kick it for the win. Although Coldwater Snapper, wow, Hexproof actually being super relevant, because despite all these nice plans of maybe playing fight with fire for a third time, won't be able to target that good old Snapper over there.
Yeah, Hexproof, a really, really potent ability in these matchups where both players can be sitting on removal for almost any creature. Hexproof says no to that, and it will make life very, very fiddly. Fire Fist Adept as a 3/3 can't really tussle with the Snapper on its own, and I don't know that Hendricks can really afford to give Federico Ranchi a 2-for-1 if he's just throwing down a small creature to try and finish off Coldwater Snapper.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to deal with. I mean, Coldwater Snapper particularly good with On Serra's Wings, the white enchantment that gives lifelink and vigilance, one of my favorite combos in the entire format. We're not going to see that here, but yeah, especially in this blue-red mirror, I gotta say that this card is overperforming. Which, given that this archetype cares so much about instants and sorceries, Hexproof shoots up in value.
Thomas Hendricks definitely given pause by this powerful common, one of the most resilient commons in the entire format.
Yeah, I guess like playing fight with fire doesn't make any sense here. You just have to develop your board. Cloud Reader Sphinx is still one of the better creatures. The question is, do you want to attempt a double block when Federico attacks you with the Coldwater Snapper? that would be pretty risky because any instant speed card like a Shivan Fire, Blink of an Eye, maybe even some kind of red pump spell just breaks up that double block completely. I think it's too risky, so I would expect that Snapper to connect for 4 damage this turn.
And
oh, wow.
it turns out that Federico Ranchi has ways of making sure that each and every creature on Thomas Hendricks' side of the battlefield is returned to hand, and that's a big old problem because Naru Meha Master Wizard copying Blink of an Eye while it's on the stack.
Yeah, you have to play the Blink of an Eye first and then respond with Naru Meha. But yeah, double the bounce, double the fun. And now Hendricks is suddenly at 3 life with no board position, facing down at least two lethal attackers. I guess you can start with Fight with Fire on Naru Meha and then play a chump blocker for the Coldwater Snapper. But then you're still gonna die to any removal spell that takes away your blocker. Yeah, Hendricks is in very rough shape here.
Often with Naru Meha, you just content yourself with a flash 3/3 that is pumping your wizards, or even sometimes just a flash 3/3. When Naru Meha also lets you copy a spell,
it is insane. I mean, by itself, like this format has a bunch of flash 3/3s for 4 or 5 mana, so people are not going to walk into it as often. But still, like a flash way of boosting your other wizards, that's already huge. And in a red-blue deck, this is one of the best cards you can open. So much value for just a single master wizard. There are also some sweet infinite combos with it in standard. If you play, for example, if you play Release to the Wind, I believe, and then respond with Naru Meha, could actually go infinite.
The Mirari conjecture here showing that Federico Ranchi not opposed to a little bit of value, and that enough to get the handshakes from the team of Stratsky, Hendricks and Floch. Congratulations to the Italian team there. A very successful round for them as they gradually make it through. Absolutely amazing. Loved seeing the intricacies of the red-blue mirror there. That the matchup where all of a sudden something like Unwind actually seems like quite a reasonable sideboard card.
Yeah, exactly. It was very smart to board it in. Did a lot of work. And I did like the game being closed out by, the Wizard's Lightning to the face. Good old Lightning Bolt returning. I love it.
Yep, it's worked very well in the past. It worked very well there. I'm sure it'll be great in the future too. We will have more Magic for you soon enough with our Time Walk match. But first, these messages. Hello and welcome back to coverage of Grand Prix Bologna. I'm Tim Willoughby, this is Frank Carsten. We've finished our main match, quite a climactic final set of games there, but that does not mean to say that we do not have a little bit more action for you from this round before we get on to the next one. We're going to head down to our time walk match now, show you just a little bit more magic. So this is a match between Francesco Ciaposeccia, there we go, Riccardo Picciafucci, Marcelo Calveto against Cavaldo Lula, Luca Del Col and Stefano Muri. And here in the middle match, Picciafucci, he has on black-white up against black-red. Black-red, not an archetype that we've seen quite so much in our feature match area this weekend.
No, but Luca da Col's version is pretty decent. What this archetype is capable of is, say, playing some of the early value creatures like Gitu Chronicler or Caligo Skinwitch, then trade them off at some point, then get him back with Garner the Bloodflame, that's the black-red uncommon, and then kick him for value. But Luca da Col's black-red version is a bit more focused on legends. Varix Bladewing, of course, a very powerful legend, 4/4 flying for 4 mana with kicker. Yargle, everyone's favorite.
Yargle.
There he is, the human Yarkul. Turned into a maggot and then eaten by a frog and then turned into Yargle, Glutton of Urborg. But a key card in Darkol's deck is Yarkmod's Vile Offering, the black legendary sorcery. So he definitely made sure to have enough legends to be able to cast it consistently. And that was already enough.
Sometimes you just get Yargled.
Yep.
This is what I've learned about this format. Occasionally Yargle comes along and occasionally you don't have something to do about it, and he will not allow the game to last for a particularly long time. So that means we get a chance to see Marcelo Calveto here against Stefano Muri. Red-green, another archetype that is a little bit more seldom seen in our feature match tables, though given that there's black mana available here, it's not quite clear whether or not it's red-green splashing black, black-green splashing red, black-red maybe splashing green, but what we can see is that Rada already in play, and a relatively potent Grand Warlord, it must be said, when you already have some saplings to work with, because whenever one or more of your creatures attack, you get to add mana to your mana pool, either red or green, that you can spend for the rest of the turn, and that really can create some very explosive starts.
Yeah, and this is almost certainly a red-green deck, also given the Bloodstone Goblin, the 2-drop in the graveyard. That archetype cares most about kicker spells. There are lots of kicker spells in red and green. The red-green uncommon, the gold one, also cares about kicking spells. And with a card like Grand Warlord Radha, you can ramp into the mana required to kick some powerful spells pretty early.
Meanwhile, Stefano Muri, we can see in hand that he's got a bevy of blue spells, but is largely stuck in terms of mana now. He's played out all of the white permanents that he's working with, and just a lone artifact left in his hand that he's going to be able to at some point use to trigger that Davenant Trapper.
Yep. What Muri is trying to do at this point is to just defend for as long as possible until he finds the island to play his better cards. And currently he has a reasonable defense. He can just line up a double block for the Grand Warlord, and the rest of Calveto's creatures are pretty unassuming, mostly 1 power. So Calveto unable to attack, apparently, even though he has access to as much as 7 mana. Not really casting anything either, not trying anything. Well, Muri will be happy to see that. The team on the left is a bit more experienced. All of the players have previous Grand Prix top 8s. And Marcelo Calveto in particular, he already has 3 GP top 8s to his name. Trying to now add a team GP top 4 with his 2 teammates.
And here we have Cloud Reader Sphinx, again doing great work. Of course, the island coming along to enable that. Very important indeed for Stefano Muri if he's going to get this game going for him. Life totals right now 17 to 22, and while in terms of number of permanents on the board it's not all that different, the 1 key flyer there, a big deal, and the fact that Marcelo Calveto passed without doing too much, yes, he got to make some saplings at the end of turn there, but I worry that he might be a little bit out of gas.
Yeah, given that he didn't, his play for this turn was just a Spore Swarm, or the Saproling Ambush, as some people have been calling it. Not very impressive. If he doesn't follow it up with a way to actually boost those Saproling tokens, they are nearly irrelevant, at least. Sure, they can attack, even provide mana through the Grand Warlord Radha, but yeah, they're just gonna get blocked. And with Muri still at 22 life, it's not like getting in for a few points is really gonna change the equation.
Meanwhile, 6 power of flyers available to Stefano Muri, meaning that he's got a 3-turn clock on Marcelo Calveto before you even worry about the Davenant Trapper and Knight tokens on the battlefield for him.
Yeah. What would perhaps be best for Calveto in this particular spot is to go land, attack with all creatures, and then kick, what's the name, Wild Onslaught, the card that puts 2+2+2 or 2+1+1 counters on all of your creatures if you kick it. I mean, it's 8 mana total, but Grand Warlord Radha plays quite well with that.
Yeah, I mean, with the amount of mana that Marcelo Calveto already has available to him thanks to that Radha trigger, essentially every spell imaginable within the 3 colours of black, red and green is completely reasonable for him to be casting here.
Yep.
Fight with Fire, very easily castable with the kicker here.
Oh yeah, you can do that post-combat. The mana doesn't really clear from Grand Warlord Radha. Like, the obvious blocks here are, I guess, 2 Knights on the Grand Warlord, the Cloud Reader Sphinx on, I guess, Yavimaya Shepherd, and then Davenant Trapper on, I guess, Skittering Surveyor, taking 5. But yeah, given that those blocks are so good, Muri will know that Calveto is not making this attack without some kind of trick or reason for his attack. So yeah, then you have to think, what could it be? Well, if it's like an instant speed removal spell, maybe you want to triple block Grand Warlord Radha, so that you'll take it down even if they remove one of your blockers. If it is something like a pump spell, well, you don't really want to do that, because then you might actually lose 3 creatures in the process. If it is Wild Onslaught kicked, well, you're probably not winning anyway, so it's almost impossible to play around that. You just have to assume that they don't have it. Yeah, it could be anything.
Even a boat.
Who knows? I guess there's Weatherlight in the format, although a post-combat Weatherlight wouldn't really have anything to do with this attack.
Now, as things stand, looks like Stefano Muri here going for a relatively conservative set of blocks, just trying to make sure that if he's keeping his creatures around, it's going to take something big from Calveto in order to really change up this board.
Yeah, deciding not to double block the Grand Warlord, probably wise.
There is a fight with fire, but a Hala the Fire Fletcher beforehand, so that there can be a little bit of an extra bonus to that kicker.
Yep. That's not a bad turn. Holler and a kicked fight with fire. Well, thanks, Mr. Grand Warlord, for all that mana. So you get to distribute 10 damage among any number of targets. In other words, yep. Well, there's exactly 10 toughness over there. Just get rid of it. Man, fight with fire is just such a good uncommon. Good on turn 3 or 4 as just a solid removal spell, but once you get to the late game, or you have some ways of ramping up into your mana, I don't think I've ever seen a kicked fight with fire that has not decided a game of Dominaria Limited.
Luca Dacol already a match up against Riccardo Picchiafucci. It's now Francesco Cipoleschi. I don't know why that surname is tripping me up today, and Marcelo Calveto needing to work together to try and stop the onslaught. Academy Journey Mage there. Bouncing Halar, that the creature with a +1/+1 counter on it. But if we're paying kicker costs, we're just going to pay some more kicker costs here.
Yep.
Keldon Overseer allowing a big swing to close that game out. And we jump across to Francesco Cipoleschi, and he has already a game up against Cavaldo Lula as well. So this is their game 2. In spite of Luca Del Col having done everything that he possibly could have, he could find himself on the wrong side of things here if both Francesco and Marcello are able to win their game 2s.
Yep. Wait, so this must be indeed Francesco versus Cavaldo. Either way, it's one of the best possible starts for the green-black deck. Likely Sapling Migration on turn 2, Dead Boom Talent on turn 3 and Talent Omnivore on turn 4. Really putting down a nice Talent team and a lot of good food for the Omnivore, who will, well, may not necessarily demand a block every turn yet, but soon enough you're gonna have so many creatures lying around that you're threatening to boost it into a ridiculous power, forcing the opponent to have a blocker for it every turn.
It's just occurred to me, is it called an omnivore because it likes eating saplings and saplings are both meat and vegetables?
I guess.
Deep freeze there on the omnivore, so it will be going hungry for the time being. Now a 0-4 defender.
Back into the freezer then.
Frozen vegetables. And Academy Journey Mage in hand as well for Marcello Calveto here. Or indeed Francesco Cipolleschi. We're not quite sure which way around the labellings go, because this is definitely not the same match that we were watching a moment or two ago.
Yep. Well, either way, it is a match that the left team has to win, otherwise they're going to lose the round. Journey Mage getting rid of a token. Of course, always best to use your bounce spells on tokens, given that they don't tend to return.
And the deep frozen Omnivore quite happy to get some blocking in. As a 0-4 able to get things working there. You'll notice that we've sped up the pace of this game just a touch here, that being because we are now perilously close to the end of the round. This is, of course, our time walk match rather than our live match of Magic, which we've already worked our way through.
Yep, and there was almost surely a green-blue dual land allowing, well, probably Miori to cast that
Tachiovo Benthic Druid briefly on the battlefield.
Yep. So far these are reasonable examples of what these different archetypes are trying to do. Green-black, just make a bunch of Talents. White-blue, well, just make a bunch of aggressive creatures, maybe a historic spell here or there, and keep up the pressure.
Right now, though, the Life Turtles, even Stevens, though, on the left of our screen, that seems to be where the momentum lies right now.
This doesn't really seem to be the best deck for Deep Freeze, though. I like Deep Freeze in decks that are either super controlling or that try to win the game in the air. Not so much in decks that try to attack with 3/2 creatures, which seems to be what Calveto is doing. I mean, it's still okay to play it as a semi-removal spell, but giving your opponent an 0-4 wall is actually a pretty big downside with the creature base that Calveto has assimilated.
Raf Capuchin will be able to fly on over and is joined by an Academy Drake, and that is enough for the handshake there. So just the one game remaining here, and here we have, it's Kicker versus Birds.
Okay, and this is then actually Calveto versus Miori. Well, Miori already down to 6 life.
We may be
mere
mere moments away from our conclusion here.
Might be stabilizing here. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Gitu getting back fight with fire. This is how we do it.
Well, it cannot deal damage to the face unless it is kicked, which is 9 mana. But yeah, now if you're Miori, you know, if my opponent ever gets to 9 mana, it's gonna be over. I have to try something and win the game quickly. Well, up to 7.
Surveyor gets it up to 7 mana here.
And all that Calveto now has to do is just play defense until he hits 9 mana, pretty much.
Yeah, on 12 life with as many creatures as he has, that doesn't seem too big an ask. Though I guess that Tetsuko Umezawa Fugitive does mean that there are a few little attackers that can get in each and every turn.
Yeah, those soldiers are getting in there. But Calveto is still 1 land away. Oh, yeah, 9th land, fight with fire kicked.
That'll do it.
Yep.
The team of Calveto there, able to take it down and fight with fire. What a powerhouse card. Love being able to see it get kicked quite that powerfully. That is the end of our round here. We will have Riley and Raf back to bring you some more Magic very soon live from here in Italy. But first, these messages.